now is the writing on the wall for Erik Ten Hag.
I need somebody help.
Ten Hag's got to go. PE teacher, off you go, mate.
But he doesn't do much right. A lot of the time, he talks babbling, inconsequential drivel.
You're like, mate, what are you doing? What on earth are you doing? Why are you drawing parallels to one of the greatest teams ever assembled?
Not been good enough. Last year winning a trophy. Where's the process? Where's the improvement?
There has to be some sort of reality of where the football club is at. And does this manager deserve a little bit more credit than what he's getting?
Everyone is expecting we're winning the league, but as a club, we are not that far.
Well, Manchester United returned to sixth spot in the Premier League, courtesy of a 4-2 success over bottom side Sheffield United on Wednesday, but they did trail twice. Before the game against Sheffield United, Ten Hag had railed against the media the day before, labelling critical coverage of his side's FA Cup semi-final victory on penalties over Coventry embarrassing and a disgrace. I mean, interesting what Jamie O'Hara sort of picked up on there. You know, you look at the table. They are sixth right now. Yes, there was some way off the fight for fourth, but should we be giving them more credit? I mean, they're through to another final when it comes to the FA Cup. Are we being a bit too harsh on Erik Ten Hag? Or is it fair to be as critical as some of the, damning verdicts that we have seen of late?
It's very hard to talk about Manchester United and not reflect back to the past and the success they've had as a football club. They are a giant in world football. If Barcelona finished sixth in the La Liga, hell would break out.
Yeah.
Okay. If PSG finished sixth in Liga, if Bayern finished sixth in Germany, you can go for all the countries of all the best and biggest clubs. It just can't happen.
But and I'm asking this sort of in a devil's advocate way, do all those leagues have let's say, a top seven as competitive as the Premier League, would you say?
No, but Man United are the club that can generate the biggest revenue. Okay? So there in itself, they can go out and buy some of the best players. Now, where I would say, if you want to dissect and you go down the road, we'll look at their goal difference. There's hardly any in it. The amount of games they've lost, how many games they've drawn. And, you just go through all their numbers. And then you go, well, OK, let's look at transfers. I can't understand how anybody's paid 80 million for Anthony and known him so well and worked with him, know his character, know his capabilities and how he would have an impact in the Premier League. Now, that to me is a really weird transfer because I don't see an £80 million player there. And he would have had his fingerprints all over that transfer, without a doubt. Okay, I'm pretty sure that Casemiro would have been part of a conversation of, look, we need more experience in midfield. We need a guy that's done a lot, achieved. Because Casemiro, when he came, was a winner on a regular basis at Real Madrid. But there wasn't much legs in there. I mean, anybody who watched European Champions League football knew Casemiro didn't have legs for running and chasing back and making it. He's a very fine footballer in a certain style, but he needs protection around him, and that's with legs. And I know people will say, well, Mudryk was around him and Toni Kroos at Real Madrid, but that was quite clearly the reason, because they aged as well, and Real Madrid were looking at younger elements of the team. That's why Bellingham ended up going there.
Obviously, not every transfer is going to work.
No, I get that. But I do feel, and I feel like it's very hard to be too critical because I want to give everyone a fair crack at the whip. But it's when Man United fall to where they have, and the type of rollercoaster football you're watching, you, as a United fan, you ain't got a clue whether you're winning or losing half the time.
No, that's true.
And I think that's, I always use the word standard. The standard at Man United was one of the highest, if not the highest, in the country. And when standards fall, someone and heads will roll. It might be players, it might be the manager. It will always be a manager eventually. Yeah. Because the club won't deal with, long-term failure.
But obviously this is a struggle that hasn't just started with Erik Ten Hag. We're going from the minutes where Alex Ferguson retired, really. Maybe you could argue David Moyes maybe wasn't given enough time, but We've seen that a lot when a dynasty comes to an end. Arsene Wenger, Unai Emery, for example. Sometimes that next manager in just doesn't get that time to build. That win over Sheffield United was their first win in the Premier League since March the 9th. And in their past 5 games, they've been involved in a game that's overall in those 5, 27 goals have been scored in that period. They have conceded and scored at least 2 in all of those matches and have now conceded 50 league goals. Ahead of this match then against Burnley, Erik Ten Hag was talking on the reason for their leaky defence.
We didn't have a sustainable back four. Every time we have to make switches, there are so many different partnerships in the centre half positions. Every time swapping the fullbacks, there we have our problems. But also there, have our attacking players have to contribute more and more disciplined, put on more pressure on the ball and matching better the runs.
I mean, we have seen the chop and change of the defence.
Yeah.
Injuries playing a part in that as well. Interesting that he's also saying, look, the attack has to play a bit more of a part in perhaps some of this.
Most definitely, yeah. Well, the attack is important. It's your first line of defence, and if players switch off and don't do their tracking back, then you're going to have a problem. And I quite clearly saw that against Bournemouth recently. You know, when Garnacho decided they weren't going to track Kerkeres at Bournemouth, and he had a free roll down the left. You know, and I spoke about it afterwards and said it looked like and he's been tremendous. He's been one of the shining lights alongside Mainu this season. There isn't many at Old Trafford, but them two have certainly been that. But if you're not willing to put in the shift to defend for your team, I've watched great players like Giggs, Beckham, Canchelsis, and many, many other wide men, Antonio Valencia, who would get up and down the flanks to help, whether they played full-back or wing-back, they would help them. I don't see that with this United team. I think it's switch off once you lose the ball. You know, Fernandes is a very gifted player and he can score lots of goals, but when you lose the ball, he ain't going to win your tackles. He ain't going to get the ball back off the opposition. And you could argue, well, that's not his job. You could say others should be doing that, winning the ball back. But in the modern game, nearly everybody has to win the ball back.
In terms of, with Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in and taking over the sort of football operations side, we're still sort of none the wiser of how they feel about Erik Ten Hag. It's all gone a bit quiet.
Well, I think that speaks volumes of
does
the
it?
fact
Do
it's
you
quiet.
think?
Yeah.
Do you think then that
there's no reaction from the club on whether he's their manager next year? I think it's. I personally.
But if he wins the FA Cup.
I don't know if that's enough.
No.
I don't think it's enough. You know, top clubs and, you know, clubs that try and win things. I mean, you can go back as far as Tottenham when they got to the League Cup final and they sacked Jose Mourinho.
Yes.
They didn't care about the cup. They see a bigger picture. You can't care about cup competition. If you win it, you go, okay, that's him staying. You can't do that. Especially as a club as grand as Man United. You know, winning the cup, it's a manner of your season. You have to be judged on your Champions League performance, which was dreadful, what you did in the League Cup, what you did in the FA Cup, and what you do in the Premier League. But Premier League and Champions League, for the biggest clubs, is the most important. And it's been 2 dreadful campaigns for them in the Champions League and in the Premier League. The Cup's not going to save him.
Okay, well, they're taking on a Burnley side who have lost just one of the last 7. So it'd be intriguing. They obviously came up against a Sheffield United side that fought valiantly, but unfortunately in the end for Chris Wilder's side they lost that game 4-2. But there is a fight in Burnley as well, and they're only 3 points from safety, and not many people seem to be talking about the possibility of Burnley even getting themselves out of the relegation zone. I'm sure we'll talk about that one a little bit later on in more detail, but that was a look at some of the latest football news, all thanks to The Sun.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.